Another shot at it after Theismann breaks his leg, and we cannot replace him, and we have a losing year. It was just difficult to swallow.
The Argos were finally a contender, but Leo was gone for now.
It was not a good situation at the Argos right then, but Leo wanted to be back as an Argo. That was it.
With 2 years remaining on his Argo contract, Leo Cahill was still on John Bassett's payroll. John Bassett Jr. hired him to coach the Toronto Northmen, soon to be the Memphis Southmen of the World Football League. Cahill proved he hadn't lost his touch, recruiting Miami Dolphins stars Larry Zonka, Jim Kick, and Paul Warfield. A year later, the league folded, and Leo's 22-year marriage to Shirley ended.
My parents never really talked in front of us about what was going on in their marriage, so it kind of came as a shock after 21, 22 years of marriage and 5 children. We were very devastated. We'd gone on with our lives, but it was very, very hurtful for the family.
Leo began working in radio and TV, and then one day got a call from the BC Lions.
Actually, that was probably another mistake that I made. It was after I had my divorce, and Bobby Ackles, he called me, and he was the general manager of the Vancouver BC Lions, and offered me the job.
My feeling with Leo was that if I brought Leo in, that would look after the coverage, the media. But it would also, he was a good coach, and he had a good record in the CFL. So I felt that he would stir things up. He would bring in some players that would help rejuvenate our football team.
Leo signed a contract with Vancouver, but before leaving for the West Coast, he got a call from Argo owner Bill Hodgson, who had just fired Russ Jackson and wanted Leo.
I had told Leo at the time I thought it was a mistake for him to go back. But, you know, it was unfinished business for Leo when he went back and coached the team, and that didn't work for him.
He went back, and they had to, Herb literally had to negotiate him out of a contract that he had already signed in BC.
It was a mistake. I wasn't ready to be a football coach the second time around. I didn't do things the way I should do them. I wasn't doing a good job, and probably it was right that he did fire me the second time.
The Argos finally did win the Grey Cup in 1983 under coach Bob Obilovich. But in 1985, Cahill was faced with his worst nightmare. He was offered a job as Argos general manager, but his boss would be Ralph Sazio, who had spent his entire career with the Hamilton Tiger Cats.
It was a very different time, and the Ticats were hated. Ralph Sazio was hated, and Ralph Sazio was a great football man. And of course, Leo working for him, well, that's another story. That's sort of like nitro and glycerin. I mean, you know, and all the makings, and you know what happened.
Well, the last thing in the world Sazio wanted was Leo. And it was a situation that was doomed to failure because, let's face it, Sazio couldn't stand Leo, Leo couldn't stand Sazio, and if you work for a guy who can't stand you and you can't stand him, chances are you're not going to keep your job.
When he got the job, I phoned him. I says, "Good luck, Leo, and watch your back." And those are the truest words ever spoken. I don't deny ever saying that. I told Leo that on the telephone. I respected Leo. I respected Ralph too. But man to man, I told Leo exactly what to expect from Ralph.
Well, I mean, if you needed a job, it isn't tough. I think that yes, it would have been tough because I'm demanding. Because if I asked you to put in 10, I'm putting in 15. If I had something on my mind, I had this kind of an understanding with him. Hey, let's let it out here between you and I, and let's get it out. Let's not bring it in the locker room or out in the field or out in the city.
He took a terrible shafting from Ralph Sazio, who should never have been in Toronto in the first place.
But I love the Argonauts, and I loved my association with the Argonauts, and I thought that I could do a good job, at which I did. For 3 years, I think we averaged 11 wins a year. Obi was coaching, and we did a hell of a job with the football team.
At the time when Harry Orness bought the club, I don't know if you know Harry, Mr. Orness was not a Leo Cahill fan.
And all of a sudden I'm fired, so I never had got much respect for Mr. Sazio, and I don't think he probably has that much respect for me, but that's the way it was.
Today, Leo Cahill lives in Sarnia, Ontario, all but forgotten by the football community, spending much of his time with his youngest son, Terry.
Terry is schizophrenic. Terry's in his early 40s, a very smart, intelligent man.
Terry and my father were closer than any son and father could be. With my brother getting sick, it destroyed my father. It broke his heart. But he loves his son more than anything in the world, and there's nothing he won't do for him.
I can look back and think of what my mother would say under the circumstances, and I can see her shaking her finger and saying to me, "You take care of that boy," and so that's what I try to do.
I'm just so proud of the man he is, and the father he is, and the grandfather he's been to my children.
If you write the history of the CFL, Leo's one of the 3 or 4 people that were front and center and that people will remember. Clearly he should be in the Hall of Fame.
The Argos won Grey Cups with Don Matthews and Adam Rita. Do people remember those guys memorably? I don't think so.
You have to love the game to really be really good at it. And Leo loved it more than anybody I've ever seen. When he was on the field or when he had his team, those 40 guys or those 40 individuals that worked together, they were his family.
Was he one of the better coaches? One of the most quotable coaches. I don't know how efficient he was. But he took the Argos from being a disaster to being a contender, so he deserves credit for that.
The league owes Leo. I'm absolutely stunned that the Canadian Football League and the Toronto Argonauts have virtually forgotten Leo Cahill. Leo Cahill should be in the Hall of Fame.
Nobody can create a stir or command attention like Leo Cahill with his gift of gab, his blarney, and football savvy. Sure, he loved the attention, but at the same time, Leo provided the Argonauts and Canadian football with a profile they've never regained. Some people believe he could help the league again, but many more, as we have heard, are convinced that Leo Cahill has earned a rightful place in the Canadian Football Hall of Fame. For Profile, I'm Rod Black.